welcome to Fresh Goods Down Under. My name's Will, and I'm the tech editor for Singletrack magazine, singletrackworld.com, and broadcasting to live on YouTube. And this is a video that I'm trying to do once a week, every Friday in Australia, or Thursday night if you're in the UK, or perhaps you're tuning in from another part of the world. If you are watching live, then please let me know, tell me your name, where you're watching in the world from, and perhaps you can join in if you've got any questions about some of the products that I'm going to be talking about today. I do have some new products here, some that I've actually been writing for a little while, and a couple of others that have just turned up for testing, so we're going to talk a little bit about those. But as always, if you've got any questions, not just about the products here, but perhaps there are other bikes that we're testing at the moment, or products that we're testing that you've got questions about, all the stuff that you'd like to see tested, let me know. I am always looking for good ideas for stuff to test, perhaps head-to-head, or group tests, mini-group tests, whatever you want to hear, or whatever you want to see. Let me know. I'd love to hear your thoughts. So, without further ado, I'm going to get cracking on some of these fresh goods. So, as always, yeah, if you've got any questions while we're doing this live, just let me know. I've got the camera right here. I can see your comments. I can see your thumbs up or thumbs down or whatever. Let me know what you like, what you don't like as well. I'd love to hear your feedback. So as always, I'll be monitoring those questions. So just drop them in the comment section right here. I'll be able to see them and hopefully can answer them live for you. So we've got people tuning in now. Welcome to Fresh Goods. Thanks for joining, and hope you enjoy. I guess I should probably talk about this, maybe I'll talk about this bike here, the Canyon Neuron, which I've had for a couple of weeks now. You can probably tell, bit of dust on here, bit of dirt. Yeah, there was one muddy ride that I went on, and that was absolutely horrific. So yeah, I won't speak about that too much. It was terrible. Yeah, my friends in the UK, you'll feel my pain, I'm sure. But I have made a few changes to this test bike. I've got this for I think another month or so that I'll be riding this for. Depends when Canyon wants it back. But yeah, I have made a couple of changes to this. I've actually put on a new front tyre. Now, if you tuned in last week on Fresh Goods Friday or Fresh Goods Thursday night, this is one of the specialised tyres that we had come in last week. So this is the Purgatory. This is the biggest one out of the lot. This is a 2.6 inch tyre. So we did talk about this last week. If you did tune in, then you would have seen this. So I've mounted this up to the front of the Canyon Neuron. And yeah, it's replaced a Maxxis Forecaster. So they come stock, and there's one on the rear. You can't see that in the video, but 2.35 inch rear Maxxis Forecaster, and on the front I've put the Purgatory, the 2.6. So a bit more bite, bit more traction. Looking for something a bit more substantial on the front of this bike, particularly for a lot of the loose, rocky conditions that we have around Bendigo. It's really sketchy in a lot of the corners. Some of the descents are pretty blown out. Really rough, kind of rutted, sort of washed out kind of trails. So just looking for something with a bit more bite on the front of the bike. The other thing that I've changed on this bike is actually the cockpit, and this is what I wanted to talk to you about here. So I'm going to drag this over. Let's get a bit of a closer look here. Can you see this funky handlebars? This is quite a distinctive look here. Now this is a relatively new handlebar from Syncross. Syncross is owned by Scott, and it's the component arm of Scott. However, Scott is really keen to kind of keep the two brands separate. Syncross is the component brand, and they're pouring a lot of R&D into that brand at the moment to bring out some really hot product, and this is one of them. It's a carbon fiber handlebar. There's plenty of those on the market, but it's actually integrated with the stem. Now, I'll see if you can get a bit of a look at that. You can kind of see that on camera there. So this is all one-piece carbon fiber. So it's the stem clamp here, all one piece through to the handlebar. So it's a very, very schmick piece of kit. So you've got 2 bolts on the back there, and that's it. So none of the 4-bolt faceplate on here or anything like that. Often you've got about 6 bolts in total on a handlebar and stem combo. This has 2, that's it. So it's really, really simple. The idea of the one-piece structure, aside from looking pretty damn striking, I think you'll agree. Actually, let me know what you think of this, if you like this style, because I have met a few people who aren't a fan of this. What do you guys think? I see we've got more people tuning in. Hello, welcome to Fresh Goods Down Under. That's what I'm calling it now, because it's Friday in Oz, but it's Thursday in the UK. and other parts of the world. So we're just going fresh goods down under. That might be a bit more simple. But yeah, let me know what you think of this handlebar. So it has been on the market for a little while, but Syncros is increasing the range of options available. This is called, now let me just check my paperwork because the name's a bit of a mouthful. It's the Hickson IC 1.0 Rise. I was getting confused there. Oh, we've got a comment come through. Shed Life Guy. Oh, thanks for tuning in again. Welcome back to Fresh Goods Down Under. I think the bars look amazing. Yeah, I'd agree with you, Shed Life Guy. I think they do look pretty damn cool. It's kind of got a hammerhead shark kind of vibe about it. That's what this design speaks to me. I don't know what you think it looks like, but it gives it a pretty stealthy kind of look. The reason I put these bars onto this bike is they are wider. So this is the Rise version of the Hickson handlebar. It's got 20 millimeters of rise. And, oh, Callum Ogden, evening Will. Evening Callum, thanks for joining in. Thanks for tuning in to Fresh Goods Down Under Live. And welcome back again for another Friday edition. Hope you're well. Hope you're riding a bike and getting lots of miles on that. So I've decided to put this nice wide handlebar on here. The stock bars on this bike are 760, which is pretty good, to be honest. And, you know, bar width is very personal preference, so I'm not here to say one width is better than the other. But I was looking for a bit more leverage over the front wheel, looking for a bit more, I don't know, a bit more of a dynamic kind of steering feel. So I've put on the wider bars, so they've gone up to 800. These are 800 millimeters wide. You can get this bar in 780 or 800. These are the big ones. It's a 40 millimeter effective stem width. They call it virtual stem length because, of course, there is no stem. This is all one piece, this handlebar. So in the traditional sense, it's not a stem because it's not separate to the handlebar. The 40 millimeter effective length. So I've shortened it up and I've also widened out the handlebar. And it's made a huge change already. In fact, I would say that it's basically brought this bike to life for me. I found the steering a lot more responsive. Of course, with the wider bar, you give yourself a wider stance over the front of the bike. So for me, that gives me more confidence. I feel a little bit more stable on the bike. But because of the wider bars, I also have more leverage over the bike. So that helps for me, for cornering, I can really kind of tip the bike over, lean it through the corners, and get it over around those kind of tight bends. So already this has had a really good effect. So that's the Syncros Hickson IC 1.0 Rise. I had to double check the name there. Now, as you can imagine, for a carbon fiber structure like this, it's not cheap. In fact, it's very, very expensive. This is £299. I don't know the Australian dollars figure, so we'll try and find that out for you. But 299 quid, I guess if you were looking at, say, an Envy carbon handlebar and an Envy carbon stem, then this is actually not out of the realms of that price point. And of course, the advantages here, you do have that clean look. It is quite lightweight as well. Claimed weight on this is 270 grams, which is not very much for a handlebar and stem together. So and then aside from that, you've got in theory, better vibration dampening and so on. I've ridden a narrower version of this bar on the Scott Genius and the Scott Ransom, and the vibration damping is really, really good. It's got a really good, comfortable feel. It dampens out buzz really well. And of course, you've got better tuning capability. If you're building the handlebar and the stem as one piece, then you can control that whole structure. But if you're building a carbon handlebar and it's going to be bolted onto any one stem, then you obviously lose control of that particular area of the handlebar. Some stems are wider, some stem faceplates are narrower, some are 4-bolt, some are 2-bolt. So some are alloy, some are carbon. So by building all as one piece, Syncros has more control over the end ride feel. So that's kind of the advantage there. Disadvantages, you can't adjust the handlebar roll. Obviously, without a adjustable faceplate and stem there, you can't bring the bars back or roll them forward. So some people prefer the handlebar sweep to go a particular way, depending on how you ride over the front of the bike or if you're sort of off the back of the bike. So you do lose that adjustability, so that might be a problem for you. For me, I found the sweep on this to be spot on. I really, really like it. Speaking of, it's got 6 degrees up sweep and 7 degrees of back sweep. So there you go. That's sort of the angles of this bar. You can get it in 40 or 50 millimeter effective stem lengths, 780 or 800 millimeter widths. So there you go. That's the Syncros Hickson handlebar. What do you think of that? I'd love to know what you think of this crazy handlebar shape. But yeah, I think it looks kind of cool, but that's just me. I'd love to know what you think. And if you are tuning in, we've got a few people watching live here. Welcome to Fresh Goods Down Under. Thanks for joining in. And I'd love to know where in the world you're watching from, what you're doing, what plans you got this weekend for riding. I'm going to hopefully get out on my bike. I'm going to take out a good friend of mine, Chris, who has not ridden a mountain bike for something like 15 years, and he's looking to get back into it again. So I'm going to take him out riding and hopefully get him hooked. So that's the plan. Right, moving right along, let's talk about this little thing. This is also from Syncros. I've had a few bits arrive from these guys, and I want to show you this because I think it's really cool. I'm pretty nerdy with tools, really, like with workshop tools and bike tools. And this, let's give you a closer look at that. This is the cutest little mini ratchet kit. It's absolutely tiny, and it comes in its own tool roll. So you got this green elastic band. So that's quite compact. I mean, that'll fit in your jersey pocket in the back of your jersey, or it'll fit in a backpack. I actually run it in my little bum bag. I've got a Camelback bum bag, and it fits in the side pocket really neatly. So it's quite easy to pull out, and you can have that on the trail really quickly. Now, the deal with this is it's all built with this tiny little ratchet here. So if you can hear this, can you hear that? So that's your little ratchet there. There's a little lever here, and you can flick that between modes. So you can reverse the ratchet for loosening, and you just pull out your little bit here. These are all stainless steel, very nicely made, and you've got your 4mm bit there. We've got 6, 5, 4, 3. We've got a T30, T25, T15, I think. Let me just check that one. Yeah, T15, and we've also got a Phillips head screwdriver there as well. So really neat. You've got all the bits there. You can whip those out, and check this out. This is a torque limiter. So there you go. See that on the camera there? See that gold torque limiter? So this guy is rated to 5 Newton meters, and what you do is you plug that into the ratchet head, put your bit in, the tool bit. Thank you very much. Get your mind out of the gutter. And there we go, we have a torque wrench, basically. Now, it's not adjustable. This one here is 5 Newton meters. And you can tighten away, let's, that way. So you can tighten up your stem bolts. Well, not on this handlebar, whoops. You're on a regular stem, you could do that. You brake clamps, shifter clamps, seat post clamp, whatever. And at 5 Newton meters, this will stop turning. It will continue turning, but it won't keep turning the bit, I should say. So it does stop at 5 Newton meters. So you don't get a click like you would with some other torque wrenches. There is no click, but it will stop at 5 Newton meters. So very good for carbon handlebars, lightweight alloy handlebars, basically anything you don't want to crush with your huge power and your muscly arms. That's what I tell myself anyway. So yeah, that's a really neat little thing there. These are quite expensive, these torque limiters. So it's nice to see that in this multi-tool kit. So I'll just show you some of the other bits. We've got a really nice little tray here. What have we got here? Oh, we've got someone, Shed Life Guy has said a similar idea to the toe peak bits. Yes, you are spot on. In fact, I'm relatively sure this is exactly the same ratchet. The bits look slightly different, but I'm sure they come out of the same place, most likely. And that torque bit there, that looks identical to the toe peak one too. What I like about this Syncros kit is it does come with 3 Torx heads, T15, T25, T30. The reason I like that is more and more bikes are coming with Torx keys, which is an entirely other thing to itself that we could talk about for hours. I really am not a big fan of Torx bits, mostly because, like, why don't we just stick to one style? Let's not have 2 different standards for bolts. I mean, yeah, it's dumb, right? Anyway, it exists. That's fine. They have their advantages. They are harder to strip than a hex bolt for people who don't know how to torque things correctly. But there are more bikes coming with these Torx bits, so it is useful to have them in here, particularly Scott bikes. And obviously Syncros and Scott come under the same umbrella. A lot of Scott bikes I've tested recently do have a lot of Torx hardware, so it's great to have them in your multi-tool rather than being stuck out in the middle of nowhere with a loose pivot bolt on the upper shock mount and realizing that you've got nothing to tighten it up. That's really annoying. Hypothetically, if that happened to you on the trail, I can tell you it's really annoying. So yeah, very similar to Toolkit kit, but it does come in this lovely tool roll, which I quite like. And it does come with a chain breaker, which is quite neat. So there's this little guy here. You actually drive the pin with the ratchet with a 4mm. I think you can see in the end there. That's a 4mm hex bit. And hiding in here, that tiny little thing there, that's an adapter. That's an 8mm adapter. So you can put that over the 6mm bit, and you've got an 8mm bit there. That is great for pedals. Most pedals use an 8mm hex key, particularly Shimano pedals, SPD and flat pedals. They use an 8mm bit to tighten and loosen. So this is great if you're traveling and you want kind of like close to a workshop kit. If you have to build your bike out of a box, say you've arrived somewhere, you've got to the airport, bike's in a box or your bike bag, you get to the hotel, you're ready to ride. This little kit here, compared to using like a flip out multi-tool, is way easier to use. You know, you've got that ratchet key there. You can actually put the bit in the end as well, so you can tighten or loosen things quite easily from a distance, and then you can flip the bit to the end, and you've got more leverage there, plus the 5Nm torque bit. So as far as having workshop kind of, I wouldn't say it's workshop level, but I would say that it's more workshop functionality in a multi-tool. That's kind of what this provides. So very, very neat. Oh, and there's magnets here. That's pretty cool. You can put your chain link on here. So you can put your 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 speed split links. If you carry spares, they'll actually sit in here with magnets, with the power of magnets. So that's pretty cool. Everyone loves magnets. And in the pouch here, we also have glueless patches, because even if you have a spare tube, things can always get worse. Unfortunately, I've experienced that just yesterday actually, where I had a couple of punctures on the same ride, on the same trail, which was very, very frustrating. So it's nice to have those backup emergency spares in this little kit. So there you go, that's a Syncross, it's called the Guide Toolkit, and that'll set you back $64.99. So it's pretty expensive. A lot of that is to do with the torque bit that's in there. I think it's actually cheaper than the Toolkit kit, but the Toolkit one does come with a couple of extra torque limiters as well. So swings and roundabouts, I suppose. This one does have the chain breaker, so that's neat. And that lovely tool roll. As I said, that's quite good for putting in your jersey pocket or backpack or whatever. Right, last thing I want to talk about is drugs. Let's talk about drugs. Colourful candy chips. What do you call them? Pac-Man. This is nothing of the above. These are shock spacers for Fox rear shock, and you can get this as a kit. I don't know the pricing in Australia. I did get this sent from Solar Sport, which is the distributor for Fox in Australia. In the UK, this will set you back $23.95 through Silverfish. But wherever you are in the world, get in touch with your local Fox dealer and they'll be able to let you know. This is basically a shock volume spacer kit. So these are designed to go inside a Fox rear shock. There are several different kits available depending on the shock. Now, if you've got a float DPS, which this Canyon does, this is this shock on the back here, this is the kit that you're after, and this was the kit that I requested. So this is really useful for me to have in the workshop, especially when test bikes turn up and I need to change the volume on the rear shock because it's either too progressive or it's too linear and I'm bottoming out too much. You basically depressurize the air can, you unthread it, pull it open, remove whatever space is inside, if there is a spacer inside. This clips onto the main air shaft, and then it sits in the top of the shock, right up in the top of the head, and all it does is it reduces the air volume. So you can see we've got several different sizes available, all the way down to this little one here. It's absolutely tiny, and they're all different sizes for taking up different amounts of volume. Now, another crucial thing you need to know about shock volume and using these spacers. Depending on the size of the shock and depending on the stroke of the shock, and depending on the air volume of the sleeve, because there are LV and XV air sleeves, and SV I think, or maybe they've got rid of the XV. Anyway, there's 2 or 3 different sizes for the air sleeve. There are limits as to how many spaces you can use or how few spaces you can use. And if you go outside of that limit, you're going to cause some damage, most likely. So Fox, if you're worried about what spaces you can fit in your shock, or you want to find out how many you can put in, etc., go on the Fox website. They have a really handy chart. You basically find out the size of your shock. So that's the eye-to-eye length. So that's this shock pivot to this shock pivot. And you find out the stroke, so the travel of the shock. And there's a really handy guide that will tell you what the limit is in terms of the minimum number of spaces and then the maximum number of spaces you can fit inside. Now, the reason I got this kit, as I said, it's really useful for me to have in the workshop, in the toolbox, just to use on test bikes from time to time. I don't have any at the moment because I've only been back in Oz for a month and a half now, so still kind of building up all the spare parts and so on. But I do want to throw one inside the rear shock on this Canyon. So let me just drag this over here and you'll get a bit of a better picture. Sorry, this is live, so I haven't rehearsed this one. So this is, oh gosh, I'm trying to remember the size. This is 210 millimeters from eye to eye, and the length I think is, I want to say 50 millimeters on the stroke. I've completely had a mind blank on that, but I think it's about 50 millimeters. Anyway, there is a spacer inside this shock, but it is one of the smaller spacers. I think it might actually be this green one or this pink one. I'm not entirely sure. It's one of these, and at the moment, the suspension's working really well. It's very effective on this bike, actually. But every now and then, I am kissing full travel, I should say. So on a couple of times a ride, even at about the right amount of sag, there are some times where I'm running through the travel and I'm feeling that bottom out. So you're hitting full travel, and you can see the O-ring down here. Oh, you can't see that too well. There it is. Ooh, Callum Ogden. Is that a shock whiz? Yes, that is a shock whiz. Yes, good spotting. I've left that on here. I've been just checking. Actually, this has been really good for validating that. If anyone's not used a shock whiz before, I can highly recommend it. If you're a bit of a suspension nerd, you'll love this. It's really, really fun to play with. And even if you've got no interest in suspension whatsoever, if you've got a nice full suspension bike, it's worth getting one of these on here. And a number of bike shops out there are actually renting these out. So you can go into your local bike shop, and if they do offer that as a service, you can rent it out for, say, a weekend, spend a couple of days playing around with it on the rear shock and on the fork. It will fit on the fork too with a longer hose. And you can get some information about how much travel you're using and also what the dynamic sag is. So dynamic sag is quite interesting because often it varies to static sag. And static sag is when you sit on the bike and the suspension compresses. And normally you set up a bike between 25 to 30% of its travel with your weight on it. So when you're sitting on it and you've got your weight on the bike and the suspension compresses, you want the rear suspension to usually sag about 25 to 30% of its available stroke. That's a general rule of thumb. Please consult your brand of bike for further details because some run less sag or more sag than that. This Canyon runs 27 to 30% sag. That's the recommended setup for the rear shock on this Neuron CF. So I'm running around 28%, 29%, so I'm just under that maximum amount. But using the shock whiz has been really interesting because when you're riding, the sag can be a little different to when you're just sitting on it. So you might actually have more dynamic sag than static sag, or in this case, you might have less dynamic sag than static sag, and that's, I find, quite interesting. A lot of that comes down to pedaling dynamics and anti-squat. So when you're pedaling on the bike, and if there's enough anti-squat in the system, it'll actually hold the bike up a little bit more in its travel, and then your dynamic sag will be less than the static sag. So that's quite interesting. So yes, good spotting there, Callum. That is a shock whiz, and very, very handy. It's also good for knowing when you've hit full bottom out. To be honest, on this shock, I've really noticed it's quite easy to feel through the pedals, through the frame. But there are some bikes out there where the progression is so smooth and the bottom out is so gentle that you can't feel bottom out. You know, it's very, very difficult to feel that, that full travel. So the shock whiz is quite useful for that, for measuring when you've hit full travel. So sometimes what you're feeling and what's actually happening on the trail can be different. So this is a great little device to use to verify that basically. So yeah, getting back to the spacers, I'm going to bang a slightly bigger volume spacer in here, and the reason I'm going to do that is I want a little bit more ramp up towards the end of the travel. I want to avoid hitting full travel on those drop-offs or little jumps or rapid kind of hits where you use full travel and bottom out the shock. I want to reduce that, so I'm going to put in a volume spacer, reduce the volume, shrink the volume down, and with less volume we'll get a more progressive end stroke. It'll also probably make the mid stroke a little bit more supportive, which I'm not necessarily looking for, because the mid stroke in here is very, very good. It's got a great platform, really efficient design, and no problems with responsiveness or reactivity. It's great as far as pushing the bike through the turns. Through the turns. Pops out of corners really well. Really, really happy with that. But I just want to get a little bit more end stroke compliance. So I'm going to try a slightly bigger volume spacer. Be interesting to see how that goes, because it might not be an improvement. I don't know. So I've got that kit in there to find out. But I just wanted to let you know that get all these colorful spacers are available for you to purchase, and you can play around with this yourself. If you're fairly confident with letting all the air out of your shock, unthreading the air can and mixing these around, you do have to be careful. Obviously, you don't want to get dirt inside here, and you don't want to put things in the wrong place where they're not meant to be. So you do have to follow the instructions very carefully, but it's a pretty easy thing for you to do at home. I would say easier than it is changing volume in a fork, because you don't really need any special tools to do it on the rear shock. So there you go, that's some volume spacers there. I'll just get this bike out of the way. There we are. And those are, as I said, $23.95 in the UK, and they're available in Australia. That's where I sourced these myself. I don't know the price. I'm guessing with the exchange rate, they're probably $45 or $50 or something like that. So there you go. We'll have more information on singletrackworld.com. Fresh Goods Friday on these if you want more information. But I'm going to leave it at that. I've got loads of people tuning in here watching live, so welcome. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you've enjoyed Fresh Goods Down Under. If you like this format, if you want to see more videos like this, let me know, because we're working on a few ideas for our live Q&A videos, and also some other videos I've got planned over summer. So if there's anything you'd like to see in particular, bike reviews or product reviews that you prefer to see, or perhaps a discussion about a particular component, if there's something you want to learn more about, let me know. I'd love to have your suggestions, because this is all very new in terms of going live on YouTube. So we'd love to hear your feedback on what's good, what's not good, and what we can do better. So let me know. Right, I'm going to finish up. I've got some more videos to do here. Some pre-recorded videos which you'll see on our YouTube channel and Facebook page. Otherwise, I hope you've enjoyed watching, and I hope you've got lots of riding plans for this weekend, wherever in the world you are. I hope the sun is shining, and if it isn't, doesn't matter. Put on your raincoat, get out there and ride, because you might as well. And oh yeah, and it's gonna be Christmas next week, so Merry Christmas or Merry whatever, wherever in the world you are. And I hope you have a fantastic holiday break. I might see you next week. I might be hungover. I don't know. It's going to be a big week, to be honest, for me. So we'll see how things pan out. But otherwise, I'll see you next time, whenever that is. And thanks for tuning in, guys. All right, bye. Ciao. End the live video.